Did you delve into any of the other biblical seekers, people who looked for Noah's Ark or the manger where Jesus was born? Because I know people are constantly searching for everything in the Bible. What type of interaction did you have with that?
I think Noah's Ark is probably the most closely related search. The Garden of Eden and Noah's Ark tend to sort of be bookends of the same story. The world was created, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, generations, Noah, flood, and then the earth was recreated, right? So there's a little world in between Eden and Noah's Ark that's kind of its own little chapter of this story. So a lot of people have a theory about the Garden of Eden, also have a theory about Noah's Ark. Florida Eden Seeker had a whole river map, tried to figure out boat speeds. So if Noah started in Florida, how long would it take him to get through the Gulf of Mexico and across the Atlantic back to Mount Ararat, where the Ark is supposed to have landed? So a whole lot of calculation going on there, but he made it work somehow. So
it is amazing, as you say, the details that they go into. Like at the Creation Museum, they had charts of Noah's Ark, and they had figured out, apparently one big problem they struggled with was where would the manure go, because they would generate a huge amount of manure. So they had figured that out. So it is amazing, sort of the mental aerobics that you go through to square this literal version of the Bible. Well, maybe now I can open it up to you guys, and if you have any questions for Brooke or for me, I'm happy to answer. So with that, please.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
Those are very great.
I had a question, just actually about the response to the book from, I'm sure that it's actually popular with Bible literalists today, and I just wondered, what do people make of it?
Popular with some.
I'm sure they're curious.
Not popular with others. It's been one of the most fun parts of this, having the book out in the world it's been about 2 weeks, and in the past 2 weeks, I've gotten, people fill out the website contact form and tell me about their search for the Garden of Eden. It's amazing.
The sequel.
So many responses. There's an archaeologist who was very upset with me that I did not include a satellite photograph of his area of Eden, because that proves it, obviously. I only talked about it, but I didn't prove it, obviously. Very upset. There are several people who are upset that I even think that people ever did look for the Garden of Eden, because of course it was destroyed in Noah's flood. And then there's this great email I got the other day saying, in 2004, I was a member of an expedition to go search for Eden, which is also the same as Atlantis, of course, in the Mediterranean. And have you ever read the Aranta book? And I was like, what? Really? He sent me YouTube links. The whole thing. They were on a boat looking for it. So that's been the really, fun stuff to hear. Bermuda Triangle. I was recently convinced that the Bermuda Triangle is the Garden of Eden by a caller to a radio program. Yes.
So did you go to any of these places that you wrote about?
Yes.
And like here, they have a photo taken down of the river and goes into the other floor.
Right. Did I go there? No.
No, do people really think? Because that's kind of proof that, that's a big place and there's the 4 different rivers coming out.
Yeah.
That they would believe it more than the other theories or something.
Yeah, I think the photography is considered more, serious evidence. And, it's a NASA satellite photograph, which makes it even more legit.
Thanks.
Other questions? Yes, Dad.
I guess it's kind of obvious, but I hadn't thought about it before. Is it the case that all these people who searched for and were convinced that they found where the Garden of Eden really was, does that also translate to mean that they are all literalists in believing that evolution didn't occur, that creation came about this way?
No.
No?
No. It doesn't follow at all. That's what I thought when I started out. I thought, well, it's going to be this kind of literalism that we're used to that has sort of a political spin to it, and it's anti-science. No. It turns out that almost all of these people are really grappling with how there's a new discovery of a fossil and it doesn't say the fossil in the body. It's like trying to bring together disparate parts of knowledge and ways of thinking about things. I know that's a little, does that make sense?
So that they don't all, I mean, they don't all believe that the earth was created 6,000 years ago, etc.
No.
So some of them sort of believe that it's been around a long time, but there's still a real Garden of Eden.
Right. That's sort of the fun part. I mean, the North William Fairfield Warren, believed the Earth was millions of years old. He was perfectly prepared to believe that, but he also thought God flooded the North Pole, and that's how we got it. And we could never go back there because it's frozen, and we sinned. So
So
this
they're
is
pick and
mishmash.
choose literalists, kind of. I mean,
Cafeteria,
Yeah.
perhaps. I think we should make that a trend. I like the cafeteria. Star.
I was wondering if you thought there was anything that really united all of these people together. I know there's different historical eras represented, including up until today. Is there something that these people have in common that you noticed in your research, or are they all looking for this for their own personal reasons?
There's a lot of personality and personal character reasons that I get into in the book, but I do think that there are a couple of overall characteristics that these people share. One of them is this sense of unity. Like I described with the North Pole, Eden, he was really working to make everybody come from the same place, right? If the Garden of Eden is where we came from, it's where all of us came from. There's never, all these different theories for the Garden of Eden has to be the only one. There's never two Gardens of Eden. So there's a sense of bringing people together, which I really like as a common thread. And I also think there's a certain optimism that it takes to go looking for the Garden of Eden, right? Like, even if you think it's a frozen over wasteland, you want to know where it is. There's sort of a basic optimistic curiosity that I really like throughout these characters as well.
Yeah, I thought when I visited the Creation Museum and they were talking about how the world is 5,000 years old, I mean, I could see one of the appeals of that is that we are all from the same family. We only go back, 25 generations. So it was, it's a sense of unity, as you say, this feeling that we're all cousins. And there was something very lovely about that. I don't believe it, but I think it goes back millions of years. But I can understand the allure of that point of view.
Yeah, definitely. It's an appealing characteristic. You, sir.
Yeah, coincidentally, I just had a book published today upstairs, Moravia, Home of the Lost Ark. That's the Ark of the Covenant. And I spent years on this. The idea is that there's oral tradition. It appears in literature. There's people who live around the place that you can detect evidence of this kind of thing. But yours goes back so far. I mean, what civilization? No, who knows? Maybe no civilization came from the area where the garden was. How can you trace it?
How can you trace it? That's a very good question. Archaeologists are sort of stumped because if, thought experiment-wise, if there was a real place, Garden of Eden, it was a garden. There was nothing man-made in it. We don't know what species of plant life would have been there. How are we going to identify a fossil of it? There is no little stone pile of shards that Adam and Eve, what would be the physical evidence is highly suspect and debatable. And I think that's why, people go with the four rivers. That's it. That's what you have to go on, is where those one river splitting into four. That's all the evidence that's sort of there. And that's what makes it fun, because you can take that evidence and spin it into many directions. Another question. Matt.
Since scientifically we all came out of Africa, did any of these people have the wherewithal to put it in Africa?
That is actually a really awesome question, because I just said that there's no pile of stone tools that Adam and Eve used, but there was actually this misunderstood anthropologist, fossil hunter guy named Seton Carr, who in 1897 he'd been hunting big game in Africa and found some really truly ancient stone tools from early hominids of some kind. I mean, this was back before they really knew what was what, and he made this big presentation in Boston at a lecture and he claimed, rather unfortunately, that these stone tools had come from Adam and Eve, but they were from Africa, right? So there were these religious scholars that, theologians laughed at him in public. There's a great newspaper item that said, so-and-so of Harvard laughed at anthropologist Stephen Carr because clearly Adam and Eve would never have used such, So there's just an unwillingness to really bring together the actual human origin and the biblical human origin. There's been a lot of fuss over that. And, clearly the biological origins of man are in Africa, but you really wouldn't know it by a lot of these folks. It's really interesting. Jameson.
How do the seekers and the biblical literalists square the translation and transcription and, life of the Bible with what if they're following, in English, what was clearly not written in English? How do they make those two things work?
I think that's one for you, sir.
Well, it is interesting. There is a group called the King James Literalists who believe that the King James is the original Bible that somehow was then translated into Hebrew and Aramaic. So,
They went back in time.
yeah, they went back in time. And then there's, they parse every single word, and it is fascinating to see because I was just thinking about this today. The problem with translation and what you said, I don't know if there is such a thing as biblical literalism because we can never really get back to the biblical bedrock. We really don't know what they were saying. Even the name of God we don't know because the vowels were not there, so we don't really know how to pronounce the name of God. And also watching how the different translations have sort of morphed the Bible's meaning. The Red Sea is not really the Red Sea, it's the Reed Sea. One of the ones I was thinking about today is that they think that camel the word rope was mistranslated as camel. So the real passage is, it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than a rope to go through the eye of a needle, which kind of makes more sense. Camel is more poetic, I'll give him that. But rope, I wonder if he was saying rope. Anyway, it's a fascinating topic, and they do all sorts of the mental gymnastics to try to shape their view with what the Bible allegedly says.